is a must, so please be respectful. Any perhaps will be ejected. Any partai we can't answer immediately will be addressed later on, maybe in an email or a call. But basically that's that, and this is how the event is going to roll. So Panapa will talk first about our past, present and future, Porourangi about all things cannabis and Rua's place and purpose in the industry. Aroha mai, I'm just going in two places here. But also, we're going to carry on with our CEO, Paul Naske, who'll discuss the company focus, our financial pipelines and money and all of those kinds of things, as well as the capital raise. So after you have all of that information, then we'll open the floor for questions. So without further ado, please welcome co-founder and current director of Rua Bioscience, Panapa Ehau. Kia ora, Panapa.
Tēnā tātou, kānui timahi kia koutou, ka tai mai tēnei ahi ai, e whakarongo mai ki ngā whakaaro o te kamupene Rua Bioscience. Tuatahi kānui timahi ki ngā whānau pane, ki ngā haue whā, ka reo tō te mauri o te aroha o te pauri, kānui timahi aroha kia koutou. Me ngā whānau hoki, ka reo te āhuatanga o te māwiwi, kei te hohi pera ki ngā kāinga, he mihi aroha atu kia koutou. Just want to acknowledge all those, all of you that have joined, and just acknowledging those that in a time of sadness, if you have any loved ones that have passed recently, and also acknowledging those that may be māwiwi sick at the moment. So lots of aroha going out for those that are carrying those things. So ko waio, ko he uri o Ngāti Pro, Ngāti Ue Pōhatu, ko Panapa Ehau Ahau, co-founder and director at Rua Bioscience. Want to acknowledge the time that you guys have given this afternoon or this evening to hear what we're where we're at, where we've come from and where we're going. And so I just want to start by taking us back to the reasons why we founded this company, and there's a handful of those. Back in 2016 was a time when we were doing through Hikarangi Enterprises, we were doing a whole lot of investigation into what economic development opportunities existed in the northern Tairāwhiti area around the greater Waiapu Valley. We were looking at a whole range of things, and cannabis was one of those things that came up. We really wanted to be looking at economic opportunities that increase the well-being of the land and the people after many generations of, I guess, negative happenings or pressure on our people and the whenua. And one of those things that came to us was cannabis. At the time, the only way that you were able to legally grow cannabis was through hemp, with the hemp license, and hemp, for those that don't know, is cannabis that is below like 0.3% THC. And at the time, there was a global green rush going on, so there was a huge amount of interest and investment and energy going into cannabis as it started to become, and more jurisdictions became legal around the world. So cannabis had largely been illegal across most of the world, and we started to see a whole lot of countries starting to open up to creating a legal framework for that to come through. So as an economic opportunity, we saw that we have a number of our whānau into Tairāwhiti, and especially in the northern area, that had been growing for decades as a source of income or to supplement their income. And we're not talking about making millions of dollars. We're talking about whānau growing to put food on the table, to put shoes on their feet so they can go to school, to be able to look after, just to survive. And so having had a number of our whānau that had done that for decades and carried the strains, the knowledge, And for Indigenous peoples worldwide, including here in Aotearoa, you're 3 or 4 times more likely to be incarcerated or have your charges ramped up. So for our people that had carried that heaviness or that mamai for all those decades, we wanted to make sure that our people had that opportunity to be part of that. And so many of our people, they were sick of looking over their shoulder to when either the police were going to come and pull their crops or ninjas in the night were going to come and pull their crops, et cetera, et cetera. So economic development and making sure that our people were part of something as it came through, because the reality is that we'd seen offshore is that many of the legacy growers that had carried those strains and that knowledge and developed that knowledge over decades were getting left out of the industry. So while we were looking at a sustainable, profitable opportunity for economic development, we also wanted to honour our people that had been to jail, had intergenerational trauma through that, so that we could increase the well-being. So that's where we came from, and that's where we started. And we have to remember that at that time, there was a handful of companies that got into the market, into the industry early. And at that time, there was no legislation or no regulation. So there was no laws and there was no rules around legal cannabis. And so there was a number of us that were the bleeding edge of the industry. Some of those companies are still here. Some of them are not anymore. And at that time, a lot was unknown. And so we wanted to make sure we were part of it. So we started growing hemp, and in that time we identified what the opportunities were. So there's essentially food, fiber, and medicine. And the after our rangahau, after our research, it was the medicinal side that looked like it was going to be the profitable one, or the one we're able to make a sustainable company out of. Once we realised that, we needed some capital, so we went out to our whānau of Te Tairāwhiti first. Our whakaaro, our thought was that if we're going to give that opportunity, we knew we were going to need investment, that it should go to our people of Tairāwhiti first. And so we went out to our people. And through a crowdfunding platform, we were able to raise about just under 2.5 million. That then gave the confidence and was followed by institutional investors, which came in to give us the amount of money that we needed to be able to do this. As other companies that started in the industry, you had to be fully vertically integrated. So what that means is you had to do growing, you had to do genetics, you had to do manufacturing, you had to do sales and marketing. You had to do the whole lot because the industry was so new, because it had been illegal. And so that had a huge amount of cost to it. And especially those companies that started at the beginning, because the government set really high bars to start with. They've come down a little bit, but the companies that really started out, it was really expensive. And that was really setting the scene for the industry. Fast forward a handful of years, and we listed on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. We're the first Māori company to do that, and the first one in the Tairāwhiti, well, the only one currently at the time to do that in the Tairāwhiti. And that was really about we'd done our initial investigation. We understood what was needed, and we could see the pathway to get into as a profitable company or a sustainable company. And over that time, we learned a lot. The whole industry has. Everybody's made mistakes. Everybody's had learnings. And a lot of money has been invested and spent in the industry to get the industry to where it is now. Now, the reality is that the regulations that were set up were not set up to support business in New Zealand. It was set up by the Ministry of Health. And so the companies that exist now have had to navigate it and weave and try and influence the regulations so that it is there's sustainable pathways for companies. So to where we are now, we've been able to do that. A couple of years ago, we changed our strategy from, rather than doing everything in the value chain, we changed our strategy to have our growers who have amazing relationships in the legacy market or with legacy growers, to focus on genetics. So our crew focus on finding the best genetics there are and female hunting, breeding, so that we're taking the highest value products that we can out to the world. In New Zealand, it's going to be almost impossible to do a commodity product where you're just doing low cost, low price, low value. We really want to be doing high value stuff. So that's where we're focused. And then we've taken out manufacturing, we've taken out the growing on scale, and we've gone to the other end, which is taking the products out to market. So we currently have three international markets. We have Germany, Australia, and New Zealand. And our CEO, Paul Naske, will talk about that soon. And we're just about to go into the UK in the end of this month, beginning of next month. So we'll have 4 international markets. Now, the difficulty to do that cannot be underestimated. To lay those pipelines has taken us this many years to be able to get to be able to do that. In the last quarter, and again, Paul will cover this, as we've laid the pipelines, and now we're starting to fill them, and we can see that in our sales revenue that's increasing. So we've come from our community base. We've been able to develop the knowledge or the IP and finding amazing strains to take to the world and to our people back home. And we've been able to lay the pathways to get them out into international markets where the real profits are to enable the company to be sustainable. Where we are now is that we are literally coming out of the tunnel with our sales increasing and about to get into sustainable revenue generation. As of this week, we've launched a capital raise because we need a little bit more to be able to get there, so that the investment that we've put in over the last 6 or 7 years comes to fruition of us being in the market and sustainable. One of the things that we carry, and that I personally carry, having been a founder and having gone out to our people of Tairāwhiti and around the motu, we've got supporters from all around the country, is the changes that we've had to go through. At the start, we really wanted to keep this in Tairāwhiti and owned in Tairāwhiti, but because of the cost of setting up a pharmaceutical company, and especially an industry that didn't exist, was that we had to go and get money from outside of the region and into institutional spaces. That was a big thing for our people back home. We had to play in a corporate space and game, and a lot of our people carry mamai about that. They carry, and so I want to acknowledge all those on here that carry that, because it's big for you, and it was big for us, and it still is big for us. That's what we needed to do to be able to get to where we are, so that we can make sure that we're here intergenerationally, so we can keep doing things like our compassionate access program, where we supply free cannabis medicine to people in our region, to be able to provide our scholarships to our rangatahi coming through, so they can experience things that they would not be able to do otherwise. And so here we are. We know the mamai of our people. Our people tell us we're carrying that. But the most important thing for us is that we were born as an intergenerational impact company. That's why we set up, and we're just about there. Within 12 months to 18 months, we'll be at that space where we're creating revenue, where we're sustainable. We just need to get over the line. So it's been a long journey, and we're just about to come out that tunnel into the light. So no reira, that's where we've come from, that's where we are, and that's where we're heading. So just want to acknowledge all our people that have, our people back home in the Tairāwhiti, all those around the motu, and some of our whanaunga from overseas that have supported us to get here, and looking forward to the support that we need to be able to stay and remain successful ongoing. So kei roto tēnā huri noa ki te tepu, ki te rorohiko, ka nui te mihi aroha kia tātou.
Tēnā koe, Panapa. It really is remarkable to think of how far the company's come in just such a short time. But I also want to acknowledge our board director, Teresa Cyprian, who's I see has joined the Zoom as well. She is one of the remarkable people who is on our board leading our kaupapa and our company. So Teresa, tēnā koe. Our next kai kōrero is Porourangi Tawhiwhirangi. He is a local cannabis legend. And in the early days of Rua, Poro was ever challenging to us, to Rua. Coming from the illicit growing scene, he often questioned the legitimacy of our company. And to this day, as a mahi at Rua and as a member of our Rua team, he continues to ensure that Rua holds true to its founding values. And he joins us now to talk about cannabis and Rua's place and purpose in the industry. So, Poro, tēnā koe.
Kia ora te whānau, ko Porourangi Tawhiwhirangi tōku ingoa, no Ruatoria, tiki ahau. My involvement in the cannabis space came at an early age. I started growing cannabis at the age of 19 for a family member who needed to undertake urgent surgery. I was invited to the King Country where we grew on Crown land. And at that time it was like sticking the middle finger to the man. So going from there, that family member now is 87 years old. So my first introduction was medicinal. Throughout the years from there, I became a guerrilla grower, banished back to Ruatoria at the age of 20 for just doing silly things that young people do. And from there, my cannabis cultivation, manufacturing knowledge increased just with the skills that our people already had in Tairāwhiti, and not only in Tairāwhiti, all around New Zealand. Learning those skills, you know, we had to be ninjas. We weren't accepted in our society. So we were part of a criminal fraternity, as the police called it. And that criminal fraternity, it wasn't about buying Harley Davidsons. It wasn't about buying Ford Falcons. It was about making things sustainable for your family. We come from an area where everybody's struggling, and sometimes you have to go outside your own confidence to do what you need to do to help others. So a lot of our whānau out there, we all learned to grow on the hills. If you knew our community, or a lot of our communities around New Zealand, they were built on cannabis. That's how we paid the bills. And so when, you know, coming into 2016, when I heard Panapa Ehau and Manukari talking about looking at sustainable opportunities for our people, they started talking about hemp. And for most cannabis people, hemp doesn't mean much. But for me, I could see the bigger picture of where hemp would lead to. And being someone who had lived a double life for, at that period of time, was like 25 years, my children were getting older. I didn't want them to sort of carry on in my footsteps. So I decided to reach out to Panapa. And in reaching out to Panapa, I couldn't even tell him the truth of why I was there. So my first introduction to him, I think he asked me what my background was, and I said I drive diggers, operate machinery, stuff like that. So, you know, went in there pretty undercover, and I went in there as an observer for people like me who have done this before, but worried about others trying to come into this space that have never done it before. So I went to this hemp harvest and became part of that crew, met some great, wonderful people that ended up working for Rua Bioscience. And, you know, from there, I guess I sort of was gauging, you know, what's going to happen with this industry. In the following years, I watched, and this was Hikurangi at the time, go from hemp to growing seedless hemp. And it was done as a courtesy for our people, because we come from a place where there's a lot of cannabis cultivation. And showing that courtesy to the people swayed a few of our whānau to actually give a bit of support to what Hikurangi was doing at the time. So in about 2018, I was just sick of my job. My job was, I was working in a dangerous industry. And I said to my partner, look, I need to do this. And why I wanted to come out was because I thought that I could bring a base foundation to this cause so that you wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. And what I've seen in the industry is most companies are trying to reinvent the wheel instead of using legacy knowledge. Now, legacy has become the new term for all us ex-criminals that we're cultivating cannabis. And we look at it in the same way of how other things were shunned in the past. I mean, we were called criminals, but if we look back at like the homosexuality and all that back in the past, once same-sex marriage came in, all those charges against people were expunged. So I thought, if we can get cannabis across the line, then we can look at expunging convictions. Going sort of around the referendum time was when I really started coming out of my shadows to the public. And it was because I was fighting a lot of the draconian rubbish that was put out there to try and sway people to vote no. Little do people know, when I was part of the hemp course that ran in Ruatoria, the Ministry of Justice actually came through to collect data for Andrew Little to compile the controlled cannabis bill, which was what we all voted for in the referendum. Now, that bill didn't carry a lot of the recommendations that we gave, and therefore, when we look at it, a lot of people say, we lost, but we didn't lose. We actually won. New Zealand wasn't ready for cannabis at that stage. It wasn't ready for recreational cannabis. So we've had all these years to try and educate New Zealand, and that's been one of my biggest goals, is to get out there. As Darylene has mentioned, I've been one of these ones who have sort of been giving it to Rua since the beginning, because essentially I've come from something that I was called a criminal, like many other people in our country. And then you had a group of corporates, or what we thought were corporates, trying to take over the industry. What we have to remember is the government actually decided one day, look, we're going to legalize medicinal cannabis. And instead of giving it to the people that have been done it for decades, they gave it to the nobodies. And those nobodies now have actually got a lot of skill behind them. They've got so far in this industry that we have to be proud of where they've got to, especially with the amount of regulations that were shown in this industry. Like, I watched a lot of people invest into cannabis. And when I saw these people investing, a lot of them jumped at the opportunity as if we were already a thriving cannabis industry. They never thought about how hard it could be for companies to jump into it and then be controlled by regulations that were just forming, and us as a country that had never ever done cannabis legally before. So I sort of take my hat off to where all these companies have gone and come to where they are now. Some have lost their way, others have found it financially hard. And one of the most important things I found with Rua was that at one stage they actually stopped and restructured. And they restructured that so that they can focus on not throwing money away, because the industry was making our companies throw money into a hole, and it still is. So a lot of companies have now had to redirect their operations into what works for our country. Coming into the Rua Bio space, I became an employee back in 2022. And from there, I worked closely with the cultivation team that some of them had been part of Rua since the beginning. A lot of people have left or moved on since the beginning. The industry has been so hard on them. Others just never found their way in it. And of course, many opportunists came into it trying to be something they weren't. And so these are all the things we see in the startup industry. My main focus on what we're doing with Rua Bio is to meet the outcomes of what our company is focusing on, whether it's breeding, whether it's R&D, things like that. And we just bring the skill in needed to work with that. Our growers, our master grower, Pete, has been here from the beginning. Like myself, an ex-illicit grower who grew in the hills. And when the opportunity came to walk into the space, he jumped at it. He has his dream job now. Together with Pete, we have an intern named Mahuta Morris, who has been supported by Trust Tairawhiti to and that's the whole thing about getting people into mahi. And so we're teaching him the skills and knowledge that we have so that they can better further him in employment. Now, when people think of that, they'll just think, well, it's all cannabis skills, but it's not. It's horticultural skills. We're teaching people how to raise seeds. We're teaching people how to work with the plant, create a mother plant, take clones. And these are all stuff that, myself, I learned them from my nanny, from my mother, from my nan, from anybody who worked in the garden. So we bring those same skills that we've learned out there into this legal industry. I am nearly a 30-year veteran of a drug war. Our community in Ruatoria, for the past 30 years I've been there, the police have come 28 times to do aerial eradication. When they come, they're booting in our doors for 1-2 plants outside our houses. They're coming in, they're doing harsh things to our whānau. And so our whānau have been brought up on that for the past 30 years, even longer. 30 years is just my involvement in the Tairawhiti area. So cannabis prohibition in New Zealand isn't helping anybody. And now we come to an era where all that is changing. And some of the frustrations we have in New Zealand is that we have a medicinal cannabis scheme, and then we have those that are not part of it that are still criminal. So you have a legal side and an illegal side, and we need to join them both together. So part of the mahi that I do at Rua Bio helps me get that education out to those people. Panapa and Paul and many others who are not there now took me under the Rua Bio wing to bring this into this space. And since then, we use our intellectual property to help the company going forward. When the company decided we should be doing breeding, Pete and I sat down and thought, what does that look like? What do we need to be breeding for? And so we looked at what the market's doing. And the medicinal market is a funny market because it shows trends of a recreational market. It shows that people want high THC. But in our world of legacy world, we know that it's not all about high THC. We know that in the past, the media used high THC as a lead into psychosis. So being mindful of that, we're looking for all the other genetics that we can find to help people. These genetics are coming in from local people and all through New Zealand. We're also sourcing genetics from around the world. And these genetics are coming in from people who sort of support the kaupapa of what we're trying to do. And once they come into New Zealand, we bring them through an illicit declaration form process, I should say, which makes something that was illegal legal. And then we're able to use it in our framework. So a lot of the genetics that we've sourced, the ones especially from New Zealand, Aotearoa, we're looking through them, trying to find the old genetics that were beneficial to our people. Back in the 90s, we saw an influx of what we called the chronic. And for those that know that term, all it really was the best genetics that came from different countries. Once those genetics came into our space, especially in Ruatoria, we saw prosperity of our people. We didn't see people fighting, and we didn't see the alcoholism that we see now. And moving forward from there into 2024, when we look at our communities, we see the destruction of methamphetamine. Now, for those that don't know, cannabis has been proven in the world to be an exit drug from methamphetamines and other opiates. Mushrooms, magic mushrooms, or psychedelics, mycelia is also leading in the way of helping people get off addictions. And so when we look at that, we sort of have hope that we can use this cannabis medicine to help our people, not only through meth, but to help a lot of our older people that have ailments, people who are finding that they're having to take multiple medications and also feeling the side effects of a lot of those medications where, you know, you take one pill, but you got to take two of these pills to counteract the side effects that come with it. Now, cannabis can help alleviate some of that, but we have to remember that cannabis, not all cannabis helps everybody. What's good for me may not be good for you. And so when we look at those countries like that have already legalized, like America, we see that they have dispensaries and people can go in and actually look for something that they want, whether it's a cerebral high, whether it's something that they just want to help with anxiety, whether it's something that they're in pain and they just need something to knock them out at night so their body can heal. We look for those genetics to bring into this space and we hold them. So we have a library of around 200 different genetics that we've brought in. We hold them for the opportunity where in the future or the near future, we hope we might see that a certain cannabinoid is going to be useful for this. So say for instance, THCV, it suppresses appetite. It's good for weight loss. Finding a THCV out there is so rare, but that's what we look for. We look for different things that we know, hopefully in the future, one of our patients might say, hey, I need this CBN or CBD. And so we know that we've got genetics that can help our people. One of the problems that we're finding hard in this industry is that everything is so expensive. It's so expensive for the patient, but it's also expensive for us. Everyone just seems to be making a dollar off cannabis at the moment, whether it's our suppliers because they know it's a new industry, they're charging the world for everything. Where back in 20 years ago in the illicit industry, we could have got all that stuff cheap, but now it's so expensive. Where I'm sort of going with this is that there's a wider picture to look at cannabis in New Zealand. And a lot of people think that once we legalize or whatever, that we'll have all the answers to it, but there isn't. There needs to be a lot of work done. And thanks to Rua Bioscience and the science that I've found working in this industry, it's matched up to a lot of stuff that we knew as legacy, and that what we were doing based off old wives' tales or what was handed down information is true or pono to what we should be doing in the medicinal space. Just to sort of end it, the situation with the cannabis scene in New Zealand now is very dire. Companies have been hemorrhaging money, and the way that the rules were thrown down at the beginning, you know, if we look at this in 10 years' time, we'll see that a lot of the stuff shouldn't have been done, but we were dictated to follow those rules. And so when I look at everything now, for myself who always wanted to start my own company in this industry, I look at all these valuable steps that have been happening within the industry and look at them to try and help others that may want to come into it. So Rua has done its groundwork. It's worked really hard. And, you know, a lot of our people who invested, especially our local people, you know, we picked up like under 2 million just from our Tairafti whānau. And a lot of those whānau that jumped on never jumped on to try and make money. They wanted to see something that was illegal before, that they obviously hated, but then the hope that came from bringing it into the open, into this space, this legal space, is given that these people have given us the chance to keep chugging along in a hard industry. And that's what we're sort of asking, reaching out for help now to keep chugging along. And the thing is, we can see the end of the tunnel. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We can see sales are ramping up. So many people out there reaching out, killing us off, saying that, you haven't done that. As a shareholder, I want to return. And I asked those people, did you invest blindly, thinking that this was some sort of gold rush? Or did you invest in a company and other companies that are walking in an industry that's never been done before, hoping to bring what we know as a medicine into the legal world? Anyway, thank you very much. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Porou. Thank you for your kōrero today. As we mentioned earlier, we held an open day at our facility just last week, and I can hand on heart say that the response we got from the people there further affirmed my belief in our company in Rua and in what we're doing and why we are doing it. And Porou's kōrero there, which was pretty similar to what he gave on the at the open day, was a catalyst for the support that we, I believe, for what we received that day. So, ngā mihi nui kia koe, Porou. Kia ora. Okay, we've taken a good look at where we've come from and also where we are going. But e whānau, the car goes nowhere without the gas. So to talk about the nuts, the bolts, and the gas of how we're going to get where, cue our kaiwhakahaere CEO Paul Naske, who will break it all down for us regarding our company, financial pipelines, our finances, and the capital raise as well. I've just got to find him on screen so I can get him up there. Let's go. Where are you going, Paul? Here we go.
I'm here. I can see you.
All right.
Right.
All yours.
Kia ora, Daz. Thanks. Ko Paul Naske toka wingoa. As Daz says, I'm the CEO of Rua Bioscience and been working with this company from the very, very early days. And you can hear from Porou and Panapa the depth and the journey that we've been on is it's been years, and we've established an extremely solid foundation. It's been nothing if not a challenge. Crikey, we've learned a lot and we've pivoted, we've changed, and I just want to take you through where we're at now in reality in the marketplaces right now, because despite the fact that some people invested for the long term, some people invested for different periods of time, and then does need to be a return on the capital. So I'm going to take you through where we're at with some of the businessy side of things and sort of try and wrap it all up into where we are now and where we're actually, what our solid plans are. So I'm going to share 3 slides. That's all. It won't take long, but allow me just to attempt to share a screen here. And can everyone see that? Right, so can everyone see that? Can you see that, Des? Yeah. Coming?
Yep, you're all good.
Right, so look, I mean, the guts of it is Porou and Panapa had says sales are increasing. It's been a hell of a journey, but we are really, I liken it to a sports analogy. We have, it's absolutely fair to say that the rules of the game, we've had to learn the rules of the game. We've started to swing at the balls, and we're now swinging and hitting at the balls. In this last quarter, June, July, August, you can see from this graph on the left, sales have just shot up to another level. And that's primarily because we've launched product in Germany and New Zealand. We've gotten to a place where we've got some solid established pipelines in 3 key markets, Australia, Germany, and New Zealand. And we are now knowing how to actually turn a profit and turn revenue. We're actually established, and it is no mean feat to bring these medicines to the market. As Porou mentioned, it is a challenging industry. A number of companies have fallen by the wayside. It is challenging, but we are now growing. And that's why, because of our Q1 sales, July, August, and September, which most of that has been in August and September. So you can sort of immediately tell that the monthly sales are strong. Because of this, we sort of now feel quite confident in letting people know that we believe that in FY25, the current 12-month period that we're in, that we're going to be 3 to 5 million, north of 3 million in terms of turnover. Putting out forecast to the market and to making it public is something we do not do lightly, and it's been for a long time until we get these pipelines established, runs on the board, hitting the balls out of the park. Until you sort of get to that level as a company, it's only then that you can sort of like start to feel confident telling people what you actually really think your revenue is going to be. So that's where we're at in terms of sales. This has come at a point when, yes, we do need capital. We will need to raise a little bit more money to get us to the point of cash flow break even. But we're much more confident now because we have established runs on the board. We're getting repeat business in some key markets. Now, the other thing I want to show you is just I want to talk about the markets. When we talk to New Zealanders, we're obviously thinking about the New Zealand market, but right from the early days, our company has been very outward looking. We realized early on that we needed to sell into offshore markets because they're much bigger, and that's the place to get a return on capital. We need a return on capital to make us sustainable, to help us fulfill our purpose of changing people's lives in Tairāwhiti. So we had to look offshore. Now, we've chosen these 4 key markets, and we've been around the traps now for a long time to know the markets that are appropriate for us. And we've chosen these 4 key markets because they're profitable, they're accessible, we can actually get pipelines into the markets, and they're large, they're sizable. So Germany, you will have heard us maybe talk about that a wee bit. Germany is the largest medicinal cannabis market, we believe, in the world. It is just in recent months, since the 1st of April of this year, it's grown significantly. People throw around loosely terms like it's doubled, it's tripled. We don't really know. We'll see what the data says, but it's certainly the demand has gone up considerably. Main reasons being cannabis as a narcotic has come off a narcotic schedule, which basically makes it easier for doctors to prescribe. So that's more doctors are now prescribing it in Germany than they were more than 6 months ago. So Germany's quite large, and we've got an extremely good partner with Nimbus Health. And basically, if we could get more product to the market, we would sell it. We're limited by supply, and we need to actually get into a cycle of purchasing and growing our sales in that market through getting our supply. So Germany's going really well. Australia, we've been in the market since approximately August last year. Australia is a very large market and shows no signs of slowing down. It's growing really strong. And it is more competitive market, to be fair. It's got a very intense competition. So what we've done over the last 12 months is established our brand there, and we're getting repeat business there now, and we're into some large clinic chains. And we have grown. To be fair, we've probably grown slower than expected, but in the last quarter, we have turned a corner, and we have put our genetics into the market, and that's going really well. They've been there 2 months, and the feedback from participants in the market, patients and doctors, is extremely positive. So we're feeling very good about Australia and the growth prospects there. The United Kingdom, it is a smaller market currently. That's primarily driven by one factor, is the fact that to get a prescription of cannabis in the UK, you need to have a specialist doctor, not a general practitioner like you do in most other jurisdictions. What that means is it started off a bit slower, but it is gaining momentum, and all the data in that market says it's growing very strongly. And because of the large population in that market, we thoroughly expect the United Kingdom to grow significantly to the size of Australia or Germany, or some sort of number up towards that level in the next 1 or 2 years. So we're about to get product into the United Kingdom in November. So as Panapa said, by the end of the year, we'll have revenue streams in 4 markets. And of course, New Zealand. Love New Zealand a bit. It's our home market. and we love supplying doctors and patients and friends and family in this market. But of course, it's much smaller. There's no two ways about that. We're an island of 5 million, and we won't get the return on capital with this market alone. But suffice to say, it's an important home market, and we need to be here. And so that sort of wraps up the 4 markets that we are focused on. We are keeping a watching brief on many other markets, but until we get an established pipeline, it doesn't become one of our key markets. So we're very excited by the sales and the opportunities in these markets. So there's and so what it basically means is, I'll just one more slide. This is, I won't dwell too much on that. There's a lot of detail in this offer, but as Panapa and Paro says, we've been on a journey. We're still on a journey, and we've changed and pivoted. We've built pilot plants in Gisborne and Ruatoria, but fundamentally now, to be able to grow our sales further and to continue on the growth that we're now experiencing, we're putting out the call to arms to seek further capital. So that's a pro rata rights offer. There's more details on our webpage, and anyone who's a shareholder on this call will have received an email from either Computershare, or you will receive an email from Sharesies. So I won't go into that now, but like, that's the journey of where we're at. We are really excited of our place in the market now. We know we are being successful in 3 key markets and soon to be 4. So it's an extremely exciting time, and this is why we want to capitalize on the mahi that we've done for the last 6 years and create the sustainable company that we know we can. So with that being said, I'll hand it back to Daz, maybe to sort of see if there's any questions and answers from anyone.
Yep, that's coming up right now. But tēnā koe, Paul, thank you for your kōrero today. And like you mentioned, it is time for questions and answers. And I just chucked in our chat there. If you do have questions and you just prefer to chuck them in the chat, do that, and we'll address them that way. Otherwise, if you can raise your hand, or I don't know, how do you do this? Little hand up on your Zoom there, and we'll take questions that way if you prefer to do them in person. But our chat's been open for a while now, and there haven't been any coming through. So I wonder, Paul, if you wanted to address some of the things that came up in our open day, perhaps. And I know a lot of kōrero at the open day was around our facility in Tūranga. So that being told, and the information that people might need around that.
Yeah, so we've put out a notice to the market about that. We had an unconditional sales contract to sell a property that we own, a building that we own in Tūranga, Gisborne, for 1.3 million. That was meant to close last week. The people that we had the contract with is a trust, and they are seeking more time to close that. So that, of course, we were waiting for the 1.3 million. So we have had to sort of make alternative plans for that. So we're looking at a loan facility, and we're also looking at, obviously, this capital raise. So that's what's happened. So it's a bit disappointing, to be fair. We wish it didn't happen that way, but we're working with them to sort of see how much time they need.
And it doesn't look like there is much demand for question and answers, which is pretty unusual. We usually get tons of questions getting fired at us, especially at open days. But if there is anyone, we'll leave it open for the next couple of minutes. But I wondered, Panapa, if you wanted to jump in, and actually I better check if Panapa is still online, because he had some trouble coming in and out of our call today. If you wanted to jump in there. Kia ora.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge Paul for going through the details of the business stuff, but really want to acknowledge Paro for his kōrero. And one of the big things is around that is when this market came into a legal framework, there was a lot of pitching of the illegal versus the legal space, or people who been in that space. And so one of the things that kind of epitomizes us as a company is that we fought really hard to make sure that those that had that experience over the decades were able to participate in the market. Now, an example for that is that there were a whole lot of other companies in this industry who carried the thought that anyone who had been convicted of cannabis in the past should not be able to participate, to work in this industry. We stood up and we really fought to make sure that that was part of the industry, and it's a success that we celebrate. It just makes sense that those who have 30 years or 20 years of knowledge, multi-generational knowledge, can bring that through for the benefit not just of us as a company, but for the whole industry, because the whole industry needs to thrive. So yeah, just want to acknowledge that whakaaro, parau. I think the other thing that it really sits with me, and as kind of Dad mentioned earlier on, is we do need a little bit more gas to get us across the finish line. Well, it's really across the start line. We're so close to getting there. Many people have said, oh, you know, you've sold out from the original kaupapa, but we've never moved from that kaupapa. It's a weight that's been bared by handfuls of us. It's something for those that know, is that when you put your whakapapa to a kaupapa, it's not something you can turn on and off. So we're here for the long haul. We've got shareholders that we want to make sure we look after, but we also want to make sure that the whole industry is looked after going forward. So I guess that's the call, is support us to put that last little bit of gas to get us to where we need to be. And really acknowledging those that have had faith in us at the start, that joined the kaupapa, those that are still there, and that those want to bring us through. I think one of the biggest things for us is that we're really going to need is to share this out to your networks. Share what you've heard, share the good, the bad, the ugly, warts and all. Because for us, a big thing that's important for us, and something that we've been told over the years, is that make sure you let people know what's going on. Make sure that you're transparent. So we're not hiding anything. All we want to do is share the kaupapa and make sure it goes forward. And not just for cannabis, as Parau said. We've got other ventures that we're working with, and that's around the well-being of people, like with the magic mushrooms, etc. There's so many other rongoa that this company, but also this industry, has the ability to bring to the fore. And it's not, while of course companies need to make money to stay viable, it's actually about the well-being of the people, and also looking at the ways the well-being of the land. So that's never shifted for us. So kind of as my parting whakaaro, unless Daz rolls me back up to kōrero some more, is just to acknowledge those that have supported us, acknowledge those that continue to support us. We're calling for more support to be able to get us to go forward and to share that out to the people around you. Because what's good for Rua is good for the whole industry. So we're not here trying to cut people down. We actually want everybody to be successful, because one of the things that we really held on to tight, and it was one of the things that we spoke to our people when we went out, is that we want to support whānau to be able to grow on their own whenua so that they reap the benefits of this industry, so that it's not held by corporate companies. But globally, you'll see, and yes, there has to be good regulation so that there's safe medicine going to people. Nobody wants medicines or rongoa that's got dodgy things in it, like got fly spray, or you don't know what the nutrients that are going into it, and people just do a whole lot of things that aren't tika and aren't pono. We want the industry to grow, we want the rongoa to be available to people, and we want it to be safe. So kei roto tēnā, pānui te mihi aroha kia tātou.
You're on you, Naske, for our questions. We've got a few in the chat there, so I don't know if you want to prioritise them. And we may not get to them all, whānau. So if we don't get to your pātai, we will reach out to you and try and answer. But yeah, all yours, Naske.
Okay, so here's a question. What's happening with New Zealand legislation? Well, at the moment, there's no more change proposed. There's been a change recently, I think it was July 1. But there's basically the legislations that were put in place April 20 allowed for a very high standard of medicine within the country, which actually, as Panapa sort of said, was really good for patients. It allowed access for patients, and you'll see that the more patients are now accessing legal cannabis than they were prior to that. But it wasn't very good for exporters, people who wanted to make medicine in New Zealand and export it. It was really hard, in fact, virtually impossible. The legislation changed on the 1st of July this year. That basically greased that wheel, made it much easier to send medicines from New Zealand to the world. But apart from that, there's no more legislation changes in the pipeline, certainly with either the current government, but I think there's no more appetite for legislation change at this stage. Let me know if that answers your question or not. Next one is, if we're limited by supply into Germany currently, how are sales projected to increase? Well, basically our sales are projected to increase by virtue of the fact that we have some supply lined up, and that supply is increasing. So we know we have increasing supply. What I was sort of saying is I wish I could buy more. I wish I could increase it more. So we're still increasing. We've got supply for increased sales, but I'd love to increase it more. Another question, do we see a role for psilocybin? Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, I mean, as some will seem, we've got a license to actually cultivate psilocybin, first legal license to cultivate psilocybin in the country. I absolutely do see a role for psilocybin in healthcare in the future, without a doubt. And I suppose we look to Australia. They were the first country in the world that allowed doctors to prescribe psilocybin and MDMA under a sort of a new area of research, nominally called microdosing, for use in mental health, anxiety, depression, disorders like that. So definitely see a role for psilocybin. It will require quite a regulation and regulation change within New Zealand. It is probably like cannabis was 5 years before April 20. At the moment, a doctor could prescribe psilocybin to a patient. It requires the Minister of Health's approval, so it's a really high hurdle. And as such, I'm not going to say it's not done, but I think it's it might have been done once or twice. I'm not sure of the exact detail, but until there's a sort of a regulation change, it's sort of off the cards in the short term. And I think that's it. That's all I can see.
Hey, Naske, I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about cap raise and some of the things people who are out there who may be potential shareholders need to know in order to take part in the share offering.
Yes. So if you own 4 shares in Rua Bioscience, you get the opportunity to buy 3 new shares in Rua Bioscience for 2.5 cents. You don't have to. There is no pressure. It's completely optional. All the details is go to our webpage, the investor section. There's a section there called Cap Raise 2024. Go to that. If you're an existing shareholder with ComputerShare, there's a different path to follow. If you're an existing shareholder with Sharesies, some people own our shares on the Sharesies platform. That's a slightly different pathway, but you all have the opportunity to do a 4 for 3 or a 3 for 4 purchase plan of shares in the company. There is this aspect to it. You have a right to 3 shares. You can transfer or sell that right to someone else if you don't want to participate. So you'll hear the terminology rights trading. I encourage you to read the documents, the offer documents and the investor presentation on our webpage. Yeah.
If I can just jump in there, basically that means that you've got the right to 3, but if you don't want to partake in that and you know someone is doing that, you can transfer that to them so someone else can take the opportunity for that. Yeah, so that's it in like real short, simple words.
Yeah, and of course you can, you know, with these things, there's a dirty, great big fat document with lots of words and lots of fine print. It is something that you do need to consider. We've tried to simplify it somewhat on the web page, but do take the time to think about it and look at it on your Sharesies platform or computer share.
Just on the capital raise, we are working on a bit of a roadshow to come out through Tairāwhiti to be able to do as we've always done, and we did at the start, to be able to front up face to face and have that kōrero and share with people there. And we're also looking at doing that potentially at a couple of places around the country as well, where we know that we've got really good support. So yeah, we're not, as we said, we want to make sure everything's open. We have the opportunity for our supporters, our communities, to be able to engage with us and for us to be able to share whatever is that they need. So for those of you that are interested in that, there'll be we'll have those details posted. And if there are people that you think that are interested or may be interested, you can direct them our way, and those details will be made available as well. Oh, you're on mute, Des.
Gosh, what am I like? Hey, it doesn't look like there's any more questions from chat. I know people watching on YouTube and who will watch this back later may have questions, and feel free to do so by emailing us, info@ruabio.com. We'll do our best to answer any of the questions that come through to us that way. But I thought I'd go around the screens, just one last round from our team to see if there's anything else you guys would like to add or to close with.
Just from me, Daz, like a small thing talking about the German market, like just, I suppose, to let people know what we'll use the money for. The money is basically going to be used to increase sales. As that question came about how will we increase sales in Germany if we're limited by supply? Fundamentally, the more we raise, the more we can turn that into profitable sales in offshore markets. So that's the real guts of it, and that's why we sort of need that money to actually grow the sales. But look, I just encourage, thank you for everyone for turning up. We really appreciate the support that you've either given us to date or that you will give us in the future. I hope you've heard really solid kōrero about our purpose and where our vision for the future is. We think we're the coolest company in Tairāwhiti, if not New Zealand, if not the world. And I do absolutely believe that we have a team that is executing on a very strong strategy and clear strategy, and it's grounded in a solid purpose. So we're confident now, as I sort of said, in our sales and revenue. We know we've got a company that can be sustainable. We know exactly how we're going to do it. So thank you for listening. That's it from me.
Poro?
Kia ora. I suppose my message I want to sort of put out to the people is that if you didn't know, when Panapa and Manu first went out to start this, it became the beginning of the industry we see now. They went out to talk to Ministry of Health, trying to catch them in their lunch breaks, walking from one meeting to another. And essentially the industry that we have in New Zealand has come from the East Coast. It's come from a company that wanted to use the skills that our people had, whether those skills were illegal or not. When they looked at what could bring sustainable opportunities back to our people, all we sort of had going on here was farming and forestry. Our people are going to war every day with the pine tree. We've had so many deaths in the forestry. Farming has been down. And just a little history lesson for the people out there that don't know about cannabis and why it started in places like Ruatoria, the East Coast or Northland or the top of the South, is that when we look back, a lot of those economical opportunities were taken away from our people by the government. For our instance, the freezing works shut down here. The urban drift took people away in the 50s. And then we had a lack of people to work with what the opportunities were here. Now, the hippies were the first known ones to grow cannabis in the East Coast, but after them, it was the farmers. The farmers were feeling a financial pinch, and it took them to look outside the square and do something very illegal just to survive. Now, we are the birthplace of the industry. We are the people that have been doing it for decades, and it's been transitioned into a legal sense. And I guess where we're sort of going with this is that we're trying to be the educators of this industry. We're trying to show people what it looks like coming from people like us that have had to do it before. So I really think the opportunity that Manu and Panapa and all those other ones that joined in that journey to create this, I love the fact that they have brought this all together and it's ended up like this. This industry needs a lot of work, and it takes a lot of people to actually come out of their shell, whether they're patients, whether they're ex-cannabis entrepreneurs, whether they're actually business owners in this industry now. We need them to come out of the shadows to talk about the industry, all its flaws, so that we can get it right. And we will get it right because we will keep pushing. People like me, I am the rage within this machine. I still get out there and I hold these companies up for what I see as wrong. And that comes from us who were growers that carried ethics and etiquette on how we how we acted in the cannabis industry. So in saying that, have faith. Have faith in our people, have faith in the industry and where we can come. Kia ora.
Kapai. Ngā mihi kōrua. I'll just end with a huge amount of gratitude for those, again, that have supported us in the past. Some of those who have passed away, some of our nannies who they literally saved up their pension for months so they could buy one share each for their mokopuna because they saw it as an investment into the future. That hope. So acknowledgement for those ones, that the companies that have come and gone, our employees that have come and gone, the ones that are still here, everyone that's engaged in the industry. For those that have been brave enough to listen and be educated and move into the space of using medicinal cannabis. For many of you, there was decades of being told that it's the devil's weed, etc., all the propaganda. So, that's massive. Thank you for coming tonight and spending your time to listen. And thank you in advance for all the support that you bring in whatever form that is, whether it's investing, whether it's sharing with someone else, or whether it's just carrying some aroha for what it is that we do. So kei roto tēnā, kānu te mihi ki a tātou, huri no ki te pō, huri no ki te whare. Kei roto tēnā, mauri ora.
And that's a wrap e te whānau, tēnei te mihi ka koutou hono mai. Those of you watching on YouTube, and I truly believe in the whakatauki of our tipuna, mena ka tika te kaupapa ka taka ngā hereni, which basically means if the kaupapa is right, which I truly believe this is, then the pennies will drop